The rifle barrel trembled against Mei Lin's shoulder as 3 bandits circled her wagon like vultures. Her father's blood had already soaked into the Arizona dust, and now they wanted more than the meager coins hidden beneath the floorboards. Pretty little China doll, the leader sneered, his tobacco-stained teeth catching the dying sunlight. You're gonna fetch a fine price in. The arrow punched through his chest with a wet thunk, silencing his words forever. Before the other 2 could draw their weapons, a massive shadow erupted from the Red Canyon walls. 7 feet of pure Apache warrior descended upon them like divine retribution, his war cry echoing off the stones. Conawake moved with lethal grace despite his enormous frame, his tomahawk finding its mark twice before the bandits could even scream. In less than a minute, 3 men lay dead, and Mei Lin found herself staring up at a giant whose obsidian eyes held no malice, only curiosity. "You fight like cornered wildcat," he said in broken English, his voice deep as thunder. "But wildcat cannot survive winter alone." Mei Lin clutched her father's rifle tighter, though her hand shook from exhaustion rather than fear. She'd been running for 3 days straight, ever since the mining camp massacre that claimed her father's life and scattered their small Chinese community to the winds. "I need no help," she lied, her accented English crisp despite her terror. Conawake's weathered face cracked into something resembling a smile. "Your stomach speaks different truth. When did you last eat?" As if summoned by his words, her empty belly growled traitorously. She'd finished the last of their dried rice 2 days ago, and water had become a precious commodity under the merciless desert sun. The Apache warrior studied her, with the intensity of a hawk evaluating prey, but his gaze held respect rather than hunger. "You have warrior's heart," he said finally. "But warrior's heart needs warrior's body to carry it. You are dying, little wildcat." Mei Lin wanted to deny it, but the world swayed dangerously around her. The rifle slipped from her grasp as her knees buckled, and she felt herself falling toward the unforgiving earth. Strong arms caught her before she hit the ground. Through her fading consciousness, she heard Conawake's voice, gentle now as summer. "Rain, sleep now. When you wake, we talk of survival." When her eyes fluttered open hours later, she found herself wrapped in soft deerskin beside a crackling fire. The giant Apache sat across from her, slowly turning a rabbit on a makeshift spit. The aroma of cooking meat made her mouth water involuntarily. "Eat first," he said, offering her a portion of the meat on a flat stone. "Then we speak of bargains." Mei Lin's pride warred with her hunger, but survival won. She devoured the rabbit with embarrassing haste, her body crying out for nourishment. Only when she'd finished every morsel did she meet his patient gaze. "Now," Conawake said, his tone serious as a funeral prayer, "I make you offer that saves both our lives. You listen, yes?" Dawn painted the canyon walls crimson as Conawake spoke words that would change both their destinies forever. "My people cast me out," he began, poking the dying embers with a stick. "Apache warrior who cannot take wife, cannot lead war party, cannot earn place at council fire. I am ghost walking among living." Mei Lin studied his massive frame, searching for some weakness that would explain his exile. "You seem capable of taking any woman you desire." A bitter laugh escaped his lips. "Size of mountain, and they say, but heart like rabbit. Every woman of marriageable age runs when I approach. Mothers hide daughters. Fathers speak of curses." He met her eyes across the fire. "Apache warrior without wife is like arrow without bow, useless thing that brings shame to tribe." The morning wind carried the scent of sage and distant rain, but Mei Lin barely noticed. Her own situation was equally desperate. Chinese women alone in the American frontier faced horrors worse than death, and she had no family, no community, no protection save her father's old rifle. "And my need for shelter?" she asked carefully. Winter comes soon. Desert grows teeth at night, swallows lone travelers whole. Conawake's obsidian eyes reflected the firelight like captured stars. You know nothing of surviving this land. I know everything, but cannot build proper lodge alone. Apache custom forbids bachelor dwelling where families gather. The logic was brutal in its simplicity. He possessed the skills to survive but lacked social standing. She possessed the desperate need for protection but lacked knowledge of the wilderness. You propose marriage of convenience, Mei Lin said. Slowly. But your people have already rejected you. Not all Apache are same tribe. My cousin Nalnish leads band 3 days ride north. His people know old ways but also adapt to new times. They would accept Apache warrior with foreign wife, especially if that wife proves useful to community. Mei Lin's mind raced through possibilities. Marriage to a stranger, life among people whose language she didn't speak, customs she didn't understand, yet what alternative did she have? Return to civilization meant brothels or worse. Staying alone meant certain death. What would you expect of such a wife? She asked. Conawake's massive shoulders shifted. Help build winter lodge. Share warmth when snow comes. Learn Apache ways. Teach Chinese knowledge in return. He paused, then added with surprising gentleness, I would not force husband's privileges. You keep your own sleeping furs until trust grows between us. The offer stunned her. Even among her own people, marriage meant immediate consummation and wifely submission. This giant warrior spoke of earning trust like a man courting approval, rather than claiming ownership. And if your cousin's band rejects us both? Then we build lodge together, 2 outcasts making our own tribe. His voice carried absolute certainty. But they will not reject us. Nalnish is wise leader. He sees strength in unusual alliances. Mei Lin stared into the fire, watching flames dance like spirits of the future. Her father had brought her to America seeking gold and opportunity. He'd found death instead, but perhaps his sacrifice could still buy her life, just not the life either of them had imagined. I accept your proposal, she said quietly. Conawake nodded solemnly. Then we begin journey today. But first, we seal bargain Apache way. He pulled a knife from his belt and drew it across his palm, letting blood drip onto the earth. Your turn, wife. The cut on Mei Lin's palm throbbed as they loaded her meager possessions onto Conawake's horse, but she found odd comfort in the shared pain. Their blood had mingled in the red dust, binding them by ancient law older than any government or church. We travel fast, Conawake explained, securing her father's wooden chest behind the saddle. Autumn storms come soon, and mountain passes grow treacherous with snow. Mei Lin had never ridden horseback before, but pride prevented her from admitting weakness. She gritted her teeth as Conawake lifted her effortlessly onto the stallion's back, his massive hands careful not to linger where they shouldn't. The first day nearly broke her. Every muscle screamed protest as they rode through cactus-studded valleys and up rocky slopes that seemed to scrape the sky. When they finally stopped to rest, she slid from the horse's back and collapsed, her legs refusing to support her weight. Conawake said nothing about her weakness, simply gathering wood for their fire and setting snares for rabbits, his consideration. For her dignity touched something deep in her chest, a sensation she couldn't quite name. Tell me of your cousin's band, she said that evening, massaging her aching thighs. Nalnish leads 40 warriors, maybe 60 women and children. They follow old paths but trade with Mexican merchants, sometimes American soldiers. Conawake's knife worked steadily, carving a piece of wood into what looked like a comb. His wife speaks Spanish and English. She will help you learn Apache tongue. And if they don't accept a Chinese woman? The knife paused in its work. Then they are fools and we find better people. Something in his tone suggested this had been his pattern throughout life-seeking acceptance, facing rejection, moving on with quiet dignity. Mei Lin wondered how many communities had cast out this gentle giant simply because he didn't fit their expectations. The second day brought rain that turned the trail to treacherous mud. Mei Lin's thin cotton dress offered no protection against the cold wind, and she found herself shivering uncontrollably as they climbed into higher elevations. Without a word, Conawake stopped his horse and removed his heavy deerskin coat. "Wear this," he commanded, settling it around her shoulders before she could protest. The coat engulfed her small frame like a tent, but its warmth was blissful. More than that, it carried his scent leather and sage and something uniquely masculine. That made her pulse quicken unexpectedly. "You'll freeze," she objected. "Apache skin is thick as buffalo hide," he replied with a rare smile. "Chinese silk is beautiful, but not made for mountain weather." By the third day, Mei Lin's body had begun adapting to the rhythm of travel. She noticed things she'd missed before, how Conawake read the landscape like a book, finding water sources invisible to her eyes, identifying edible plants among the seemingly barren vegetation, reading weather signs in cloud formations and wind patterns. "Teach me," she said as they rested beside a hidden spring. His eyebrows rose in surprise. "Teach? What?" "Everything. How to survive in this land. If I'm to be Apache wife, I should learn Apache skills." Something shifted in his expression, a warmth replacing the cautious distance he'd maintained. "First lesson," he said, kneeling beside the spring. "Water speaks if you know how to listen." He cupped his hands and sipped, then nodded approval. "Sweet water, no bitter taste. See how it bubbles from rock? Fresh spring, not stagnant pool. Stagnant water brings sickness." Mei Lin knelt beside him, mimicking his actions. The water was indeed sweet and cold, nothing like the brackish liquid they'd been rationing from his waterskin. "Good student," Conawake said approvingly. "Quick mind, willing heart. My cousin's people will see your worth." As they prepared to resume their journey, Mei Lin realized something had changed between them. The careful formality of their arrangement was giving way to something warmer, not love. Not yet, but the foundation upon which trust could grow. Smoke rose from hidden valleys as they crested the final ridge, and Mei Lin's stomach clenched with nervous anticipation. Below them, scattered across a meadow bisected by a crystal stream, stood the lodges of Nalnish's band. "They know we come," Conawake murmured, pointing to distant figures moving between the dwellings. "Scouts reported our approach hours ago." Mei Lin straightened her spine and smoothed her travel-stained dress as best she could. First impressions would determine their fate, and she refused to appear weak before these people who might become her new family. A hunting party rode out to meet them, led by a weather-beaten warrior whose face bore the same strong features as Conawake. This had to be Nalnish, and his expression revealed nothing as his eyes moved from his exiled cousin to the small Chinese woman sitting behind him. "Conawake," Nalnish said in heavily accented English, clearly for Mei Lin's benefit. "You return to us with strange burden." "Not burden, cousin, wife." The word sent murmurs through the hunting party. Several warriors leaned forward in their saddles, studying Mei Lin with naked curiosity. She met their gazes steadily, refusing to show the fear that gnawed at her belly. "Wife?" Nalnish's tone carried skeptical amusement. "And what tribe claims this tiny sparrow as daughter?" "She claims herself," Conawake replied proudly. Mei Lin fought 3 armed bandits alone, protected her father's body from carrion birds, crossed 2 days of desert without food or proper water. She is warrior in silk dress. One of the younger warriors snorted with derision. "Warrior? She looks like child playing dress-up." The insult lit a fire in Mei Lin's chest. Without thinking, She slipped from the horse's back and approached the sneering warrior. "You think Chinese woman is weak?" she challenged in her careful English. Before anyone could react, she grabbed a handful of dust and flung it in the warrior's eyes, then yanked him from his horse with surprising strength. As he hit the ground, she pressed her knee against his throat and held her father's hidden blade to his chest. "First rule of combat," she said calmly, "never underestimate enemy because of size or appearance." The meadow fell silent except for the whisper of wind through grass. Then Nalnish began to laugh, a deep, rich sound that spread through his warriors like wildfire. "Release him, tiny warrior," he commanded with obvious delight. "Young Dakota has learned a valuable lesson today." Mei Lin stepped back and offered her hand to help the embarrassed warrior to his feet. His face burned with shame, but he accepted her assistance with grudging respect. "Forgive my rudeness," Dakota mumbled. "I spoke without wisdom." "Wisdom comes from experience," Mei Lin replied diplomatically. "Now you have both." Nalnish nudged his horse closer, studying her with new interest. "Tell me, tiny warrior, what skills do you bring to our people besides humbling proud young men?" Mei Lin straightened her shoulders. "I can read and write in 3 languages. I know Chinese medicine and herb lore. My father taught me to work with numbers for trade and accounting." She paused, then added with quiet pride, "And I learned quickly. Whatever you choose to teach." The chief's eyes moved between her and his massive cousin. "Kanawake, does this woman know Apache customs? Does she understand what marriage means to our people?" "She understands survival," Kanawake replied. "And she honors agreements made in blood. The rest can be learned if hearts are willing." Nalnish was quiet for long moments, his weathered face revealing nothing of his thoughts. Finally, he nodded slowly. "We will test this union. If foreign woman can prove worthy of Apache warrior, and if Apache warrior can prove worthy of such courage, then our band will welcome them both." "What kind of test?" Mei Lin asked, though she dreaded the answer. The chief's smile held both kindness and challenge. "You will face the same trials as any young woman seeking to marry into our tribe. 3 days, 3 tests. Pass all 3, and you earn the right to call yourself Apache wife." Mei Lin's heart hammered against her ribs, but she kept her voice steady. "I accept your challenge." As they rode toward the village, Kanawake leaned close and whispered, "You do not have to do this. We can leave now, build our own life elsewhere." She met his concerned gaze with determination. A bargain sealed in blood deserves more than retreat at the first obstacle. "Besides," she added with a small smile, "I'm curious to see what these tests reveal about both of us." Dawn broke cold and merciless as the women of the tribe gathered to witness Mei Lin's first trial. Her hands shook as she stood before the blazing fire pit, but her voice remained steady when she spoke the required words. "I come before the spirits of my ancestors and yours, seeking to join 2 bloodlines in sacred marriage." Ayana, Nalnish's wife, stepped forward with a bundle wrapped in deerskin. "First trial tests your hands. Can they create beauty and usefulness for your people?" She unwrapped the bundle to reveal materials Mei Lin had never seen before. Supple leather strips, dyed porcupine quills, metal beads that caught the morning light like captured stars, and an assortment of tools whose purposes she could only guess. "You have until sunset to create a gift worthy of an Apache warrior," Ayana explained. "Something that shows your skill and understanding of our ways." Mei Lin knelt beside the materials, her mind racing. The women of the tribe formed a circle around her, some openly curious, others clearly skeptical. She could feel their judgment like heat from the fire, but she forced herself to examine each item carefully. The leather was beautifully prepared, soft yet strong. The quills had been dyed in vibrant reds, blues, and yellows. The beads were clearly Spanish in origin, probably acquired through trade. But what could she create that would demonstrate both skill and cultural understanding? As the sun climbed higher, inspiration struck. She began cutting the leather with careful precision, her father's teachings about geometry and proportion guiding her hands. The watching women murmured among themselves as she worked, some clearly impressed by her steady technique. By midday, the shape began to emerge, a belt designed to hold weapons and tools, but decorated with patterns that told a story. Using the dyed quills and Spanish beads, she wove images of a great bird carrying a small flower across vast skies, representing her journey from China to Apache lands. Around the edges, she added symbols she'd observed on the tribe's clothing and weapons, showing her attention to their customs. The sun hung low on the horizon when she finally finished, her fingers cramped and bleeding from the fine work. She held up the completed belt, its intricate patterns gleaming in the firelight. Ayana examined the work with professional interest, her weathered fingers tracing the delicate quill work. Beautiful craftsmanship, she admitted. But does it serve practical purpose? Mei Lin demonstrated how the belt's multiple loops and pouches could hold knives, ammunition, medicine bundles, and other essential items. A warrior's tool should be both beautiful and useful, she said, like the warrior himself. The women exchanged glances, and several nodded approval. Ayana smiled for the first time. You passed first trial, little sister. Rest now for tomorrow. Tests your spirit. That night, as Mei Lin tended her sore fingers by the fire, Kanawake sat beside her with quiet concern. You did well today, but tomorrow will be harder. The spirit trial. It asks much of those who attempt it. What will I face? He was quiet for long moments, staring into the dancing flames. The sacred cave holds visions for those brave enough to seek them. But visions show truth, not always what we wish to see. Some who enter never emerge unchanged. Mei Lin felt a chill that had nothing to do with the mountain air. And if I refuse? Then we leave tonight, find another path. His massive hand covered hers gently. I will not ask you to lose yourself for my acceptance among these people. She studied his profile in the firelight, seeing strength tempered by genuine kindness. This man had already shown her more consideration than any husband among her own people might have. Perhaps that was worth any risk. I won't retreat now, she said firmly. Besides, I'm curious what visions await a Chinese woman in an Apache sacred cave. The next morning, Ayana led her up a steep path to a cave mouth that yawned like a hungry mouth in the mountainside. Inside you will fast and wait for the spirits to speak, she explained. When they do, you must have courage to hear their message, even if it brings pain. Mei Lin entered the cave alone, carrying only a water gourd and her father's jade pendant. The darkness swallowed her completely, and she settled cross-legged on the stone floor to wait. Hours passed in silence, broken only by her own breathing and the distant sound of wind. Then, gradually, the darkness began to shift and swirl, and visions rose before her eyes like smoke given form. The cave walls dissolved into mist, and Mei Lin found herself standing in the courtyard of her childhood home in Guangzhou. Her mother sat at the familiar wooden table, sorting medicinal herbs with practiced efficiency. Daughter, her mother said without looking up, why do you run from your true nature? I don't understand, Mama. You chase after foreign ways, foreign man, foreign people. But jade remains jade whether in Chinese temple or Apache lodge. Her mother's eyes, when she finally raised them, held infinite sadness. Your father brought you to Gold Mountain seeking treasure. What treasure do you seek now? The vision shifted, and Mei Lin saw herself as others might, a small figure lost among giants, clinging desperately to customs not her own. The image stung with its implied criticism. I seek survival, she whispered to the darkness. Survival? Her mother's voice echoed strangely. Or belonging. Before Mei Lin could answer, the scene changed again. Now she stood in a vast canyon where two rivers met, one flowing clear and blue from mountain snows, the other muddy red from desert sands. Where they joined, the waters swirled in beautiful patterns, neither fully clear nor fully red, but something entirely new. A figure emerged. From the mist, tall and powerfully built, but his face remained hidden in shadow. When he spoke, his voice resonated with the deep tones of Conawake. "Little wildcat, do you come to me from strength or weakness?" The question pierced her heart like an arrow. She had told herself their arrangement was practical, born of mutual need. But was she simply trading one form of dependence for another? "I come ... She began, then stopped. In this place of visions and truth, lies seemed impossible. "I come from fear. Fear of death, fear of rape, fear of a world that has no place for women like me." The shadow figure stepped closer. "And what do you bring to me? What gifts do you carry besides your need for shelter?" Images flashed through her mind, her father's teachings about trade and languages, her mother's knowledge of healing herbs, her own quick mind and stubborn will. But beneath these practical skills lay something deeper, the strength that had carried her across an ocean, through the death of her father, across hostile desert alone. "I bring the blood of merchants and scholars," she said slowly. "I bring knowledge of distant lands and different ways of seeing. I bring ... double quote." She paused, then smiled with sudden understanding. "I bring the other half of the river." The shadow figure reached out, and where his hand touched hers, she felt warmth spreading through her entire body. "Then we make something new together, neither fully Apache nor fully Chinese, but stronger than either alone." The vision dissolved, leaving her gasping in the cave's darkness. But now she understood what the trial truly tested, not her willingness to abandon her identity, but her courage to transform it into something larger. When she emerged from the cave the next morning, Ayana waited with knowing eyes. "What did the spirits show you, sister?" "That marriage is not about becoming someone else," Mei Lin replied thoughtfully. "It's about becoming more yourself than you ever thought possible." The older woman nodded approvingly. Wisdom words. "You pass second trial. Tomorrow comes the final test, the trial of fire." That evening, Conawake found her sitting by the stream, staring into the flowing water. "The visions troubled you?" "No," she said, surprising herself. "They freed me. I understand now why you were cast out by your first tribe." His massive frame tensed. "What do you mean?" "You're too gentle for warriors who value only strength, too thoughtful for those who prefer simple answers. They couldn't fit you into their small understanding of what an Apache man should be." She met his eyes directly. "But their failure to see your worth doesn't diminish it." Something shifted in his expression, a vulnerability she hadn't seen before. "And you? Do you see worth in broken-down warrior who frightens women and disappoints chiefs?" Mei Lin reached for his enormous hand, her small fingers tracing the scars that spoke of countless battles. "I see a man who caught a falling woman and asked nothing in return. A man who offers protection without demanding surrender. A man who—" She paused, recognizing the truth even as she spoke it. "A man I'm beginning to love." The words hung between them like a bridge spanning two worlds. Conawake's free hand cupped her face with infinite gentleness, his thumb brushing away tears she hadn't realized were falling. "Tomorrow you face fire," he said softly. "After that, whatever happens, you are free to choose your path. I will not hold you to bargains made in desperation." Mei Lin leaned into his touch, feeling safer than she had since her father's death. Some bargains become blessings if we're brave enough to honor them. The final trial came with the dawn, and Mei Lin faced it with calm determination. The entire tribe had gathered in a circle around a pit where flames leaped toward the pale morning sky. fed by aromatic woods that filled the air with sacred smoke. Nalnish stood before the fire, his weathered face solemn as he explained the ancient test. Fire reveals truth, he intoned. It burns away pretense, leaves only what is real. You must walk through flames that will either accept or reject you as Apache sister. Mei Lin studied the blazing corridor, two walls of fire barely wide enough for a person to pass between. The heat struck her face like a physical blow even from this distance, and she could see how the flames reached toward each other, creating an archway of living fire. If the spirits accept you, Iana added gently, the fire will part like water before your steps. If they reject you— She didn't finish the sentence, but her meaning was clear. Kanawake stepped forward, his massive frame tense with concern. This trial is not required by our original bargain. I will not see you burned for the approval of others. But Mei Lin had already begun removing her shoes and outer clothing, standing now in just her simple cotton dress. The jade pendant her mother had given her hung around her neck, its cool surface a counterpoint to the fire's heat. Some things are worth the risk, she said simply. She approached the flames slowly, feeling their intensity increase with each step. At the very edge of the fire corridor, she paused and closed her eyes, remembering the visions from the sacred cave. She was not trying to become Apache, she was trying to become herself fully and completely. Taking a deep breath, she stepped into the flames. The fire roared around her like a living thing, but instead of searing pain, she felt only warmth spreading through her body. The flames seemed to recognize something in her spirit, parting just enough to allow her passage while still licking at her skin with curious tongues of light. Step by step, she walked through the corridor of fire, her cotton dress smoking but not catching, her hair streaming behind her like a banner. The jade pendant at her throat grew warm, then hot, then settled into a pleasant warmth that seemed to pulse with her heartbeat. When she emerged on the other side, the entire tribe erupted in amazed murmurs. Her dress was singed but intact, her skin flushed but unburned. She turned to face them all, and in her eyes they saw something that had not been there before. The confidence of a woman who had looked into the heart of fire and found acceptance. Nalnish approached her with wonder written across his features. Sister, he said formally, the spirits have spoken clearly. You are welcome among the people. But it was Kanawake's expression that brought tears to her eyes. The giant warrior looked at her as if she were a miracle, his dark eyes shining with something that went far beyond gratitude or relief. My wife, he said softly, and the word carried weight it had never held before. The wedding ceremony that evening was unlike anything Mei Lin could have imagined. Apache traditions blended with Chinese customs as the two cultures found ways to honor both their heritages. She wore an Apache wedding dress crafted by the women of the tribe, but around her neck she still wore her mother's jade pendant. Kanawake stood proud in his finest warrior regalia, but woven into his hair were red ribbons in the Chinese style that symbolized joy and good fortune. As they spoke their vows before the assembled tribe, Mei Lin realized that their marriage had become something far more than a practical arrangement between desperate strangers. They had become partners in the truest sense, each bringing their own strength to create something neither could achieve alone. I offer you my protection and my respect, Kanawake said in his deep voice. I promise to honor your wisdom and learn from your courage. I offer you my loyalty and my truth, Mei Lin replied. I promise to stand beside you as an equal partner in all things. When they kissed to seal their union, the tribe cheered, but Mei Lin barely heard them. She was lost in the wonder of finding love where she had only sought survival, discovering home in the arms of a man who had been as lost as she was. Later, as they sat together before their own fire outside their newly built lodge, Kanawake carved delicate patterns into a piece of wood while Mei Lin worked Chinese symbols into an Apache prayer shawl. Do you ever regret the bargain we made? He asked quietly. Mei Lin looked up from her needlework and smiled. Which bargain? The one made in desperation by strangers in the desert? Or the one made in love by partners who choose each other freely? Both. Either. She set aside her work and moved closer to him, resting her small hand on his massive arm. I regret nothing that brought me to this moment. Our children will carry the strength of two proud peoples, and they will know that love can grow in the most unlikely soil. Kanawake set down his carving and gathered her into his arms, marveling as he always did at how perfectly she fit against his chest despite their difference in size. Our children, he repeated wonderfully. I like the sound of that. Above them, stars wheeled in the vast desert sky, witnesses to a love story that had begun with practical necessity and bloomed into something beautiful enough to last generations. In the morning, there would be work to do, lodges to maintain, children to teach, a community to serve. But tonight, there was only the quiet contentment of two souls who had found their perfect match in the most unexpected place. The fire crackled between them and the stars, sending sparks up into the darkness like prayers of gratitude to whatever spirits had guided a giant Apache warrior and a small Chinese woman to find each other across the vast wilderness of the American frontier. Story would be told around fires for generations to come, not as a tale of desperation rewarded, but as proof that love recognizes no boundaries when two hearts are brave enough to reach across the divide between different worlds and discover that beneath all surface differences, the human need for connection, respect, and partnership remains beautifully, eternally the same.